Here's to the builders, the installers and the specifiers, the people behind our homes, creating plans, foundations, frames and walls to build homes filled with love, laughter, tears and joy. You're architects of innovation, designers of comfort, builders of dreams and installers of perfection. With skill and determination, you're building a better New Zealand. And we're here to support you every step of the way. Jim, let's build.
E nā mana, e nā reo, e Ngāti Whātua, nai kaitiaki o te whenua nei, ka nui te mihi. Ka mihi hoki ki a waipapa taumata rau, e whaka kotahi mai nei i a tātou, i a raro, i te mare o te toi, me te whakaro nui. He mihi nui hoki ki a windstone wallboards jib, mō tō rātou tautoko e tēnei kaupapa. So acknowledgements firstly to the mana whenua, Ngāti Whātua, of this place, and also to Waipapa Taumatarau for bringing us together and recognising this kaupapa. That's Indigenous knowledge as an active force that can reshape colonial structures rather than merely resisting them. We give big thanks to John Kitchen personally, but more generically to Windstone Wallboards, aka JIB, for their generous and swerving support in bringing this series together. It's good to see your plant is in Tauranga Moana, given that so many Tauranga Moana participate in this series. He mihi nui hoki kia Te Kāhui Whaihanga, New Zealand Institute of Architects, Auckland branch, Tamaki Makaurau, mi tai tukoro. Tēnā tātou katoa. Thanks also to Te Kāhui Whaihanga, New Zealand Institute of Architects, Auckland branch, for their generous support and bringing the series together again. Some context. In 2021, when I was asked by Architecture New Zealand to reflect on my own 30-year absence from Aotearoa, I could have said I was in prison, but instead I was in England. I wrote an article called Transcolonisation 1990 to 2020. The article traced 30 years of the slow road to Te Tiao Māori architecture and the quest for the emergent architecture on these islands to reconcile colonial traditions and European influences with the sustained interest in the Indigenous project. Then the whakapapa, and I'd like to thank Tumu Deirdre Brown for prompting me to shift the article into the Archi Lecture series. And so in 2021, we started with a 5-speaker series, and in that very first episode in COVID times, and I'd like to mihi Nigel Burrell, who at the time was the curator of the largest exhibition of contemporary Māori art. Nigel resigned at the opening. The reasons for that evident in Toitu visual sovereignty, and also attending that in partnership in that talk was Tim Melville, the only independent Māori curator, gallerist not curator, in the country. The second speaker was our first Māori law professor, Jacinta Ruru, and in a world first, she spoke of Māori values of taiao and kaitiaki that give rise to legal personhood for the natural environment. And I guess for me as an architect, it made me wonder, what if one day the whare tipuna, the ancestral house, which is living heritage, which Māori directly address each time during pōwhiri on the marae, what if it too one day might be afforded legal personality? And those were COVID times, as I mentioned. Back then, Witi Ihimaera had just published Navigating the Stars, and it was the only talk where, during that break in those COVID time, that we could do a talk, kanohi ki te kanohi. So we invited the Samoan Māori indie jazz band to play, and that's The Sound of the Pacific, you can see there. Māori jazz drummer. Before I talk about the next two speakers, I want to talk about the architecture of this space that hosts these talks, because in Kiritapu Alan WhatsApped me last week and asked me in preparation for her talk, so Tyrone, you might want to check this out. She asked me, what was it like? You know, was it a typical lecture hall? Tēnei wahi mā tauranga. So to answer Kitty's question, I did what most people who do at this university. I Googled it, and I found out that my colleague Whānau Hagigi wrote an article called Heterotopic Sites of Knowledge Production, Notes on the Analysis of Lecture Halls. So in that article include images of this very space. So here we are back in the 1970s when the design theatre was all rather bare. There were no seats, just bleacher type seating. Those bleachers you probably can see in Hiwa and probably a lot of architectural projects in education today. Students stretched and sketched on large notebooks, each occupying a space of much larger than the 40 centimetre wide flip-top perch which you find yourselves on today. When I was here at the school in the late 1980s, the seats, as you can see on the left image, were red, plastic and mobile. And the evolution of the design theatre, such as today, requires me still to talk about your ass. Still red, albeit from a comfortable, constrained laptop seating. And finally, just some heritage of the space. I'm going to read you verbatim the caption beneath figure 1 in that article. In a lecture hall at the University of Auckland, students face a speaker and are invited to take notes. That is to transcribe what they hear and see into words. And engraving on the slim timber board, which is no longer in front of you, states fuck tests and actually fuck uni. It illustrates how this horizontal flat continuous platform is used to mark thoughts and express frustrations. Photo by the author, unquote. That leads us, our fourth speaker from 2 years ago was Paul Majuri of the Tipuna Monga Authority, under Paul's watch, and as an example of Jacinta's legal personhood delivered, the authority rid the city's tallest volcano, Mongafo, of cars and replaced it with a boardwalk designed by Isthmus, a wahi tapu, a sacred space of immense historical, cultural and spiritual significance, and thanks to Māori values being embedded in the built environment. Ngā mihi kia koe, e hoa. Our last speaker back then was filmmaker Chelsea Winstanley. Kia ora cuz, thank you for coming to Tautoko Tyrone and Kiritapu. And Chelsea is very kindly to maintain the connection to the first series by speaking again after Easter. Kia ora. E tēnei pō, e te rangatira e Tyrone Ohia. No mai, haere mai, ki wā ngā nui i a mātou. So Indigenous thought leader Tyrone Ohia, welcome to Waipapa Taumataro. E te pō whakaaro takitaki, e tu mana kōrero, kua tai mai koe ki wā ngā nui i a mātou, ki tō mātou kura ki te pare, te ingoa a whakawhiawhia ai e Riwi Thompson. So as an unconventional thinker, you arrive in our school, Te Pare, a name gifted to us by Riwi Thompson. I think you're familiar with him, given that you wrapped him in pink and blue. E te kai hoa hoa, Māori, rongonui, ka whakahonoretia koe ki te hono atu ki te ropu hira wā. Ara, ki te Alliance Graphique International, he tohu nui rawa atu, he tohu ia te ao whānui mō tu honga kia hoa hoa. No mai, kuhu mai kia wai nā nui ia mātou. So just recently, the highest global recognition I believe one can achieve as a graphic designer is to join the esteemed ranks of the Alliance Graphique Internationale. Kia ora, Tyrone. I see you're the first Māori to have done that, so maybe it's a bit of a... So, no mai haere mai, welcome.
Oh, kia ora tātou, mihi ana kia tātou kua huihui mai, tēnei ahi pō, kia koe Anthony, o te rā te whare wānanga nei, me ngā kai tautoko, ngā pau tautoko o te kaupapa tēnā koutou, ngā taringa reawe tēnā koutou, ngā kanohi kitea, ngā hoa, ngā whanaunga, tēnā koutou i tō tainga mai tēnei pō, te tautoko i tēnei kaupapa, heuri tēnei o tauranga moana, Ngāti Pūkenga, Ngāi Te Rangi, ngā pōtiki, e mihi kawana kia koutou. Kia ora everyone, lovely to be here tonight. My name's Tyrone Ohia and yeah, it's quite intimate actually. I was thinking it's a little bit more intimidating when there's lots of people in the audience who you know, which is making me freeze up a little bit, but I'm just gonna get straight into it. I've probably got too many slides and it would be cool to have a kōrero or ask some questions, so I might just kick straight in. So we've got I guess a design consultancy called Extended Whānau, based up here in Tāmaki. And I guess I just want to say that we're going to show some work, but I'm not the only one who's done any of the work. You know, we've got a team, we've got all sorts of people who work with us, and design is a pretty social kaupapa, and we need lots of skill sets in order to do what we do. And yeah, that's why we're called Extended Whānau, really. We spend a lot of time thinking about identity, and for us, specifically to graphic design, you know, there's a lot of design out there that it's quite hard to tell where it comes from. You know, it's quite universal, I guess, in its aesthetic and in its ideas and what it's trying to do, and that comes from, you know, the commercial capitalist role of graphic design, really, which is what it is. It's, you know, it's creativity to sell stuff. And so what we try and do is we try and think about how the design that we do could come more from our place or speak more to localities of the project itself that we're working on. And, you know, there's a lot to be said for the effect of design. Like, design is everywhere. Design's on our road signs. Design is on everything in the supermarket is being designed. All of our websites have been designed. And if we were to look at all of that design that we actually take in every day, how much of that really affirms an Aotearoa, a Māori identity, you know, and connects us more deeply with who we are, knowing how important our environment is to shaping us. And so a lot of it doesn't really do that. And so that's something that we, I guess, are just exploring as a studio, and it's something we believe in. There's lots of benefits of belonging and understanding your identity. There's lots of studies around how people who have a better sense of who they are and where they come from and have that affirmed in them from a young age go on to do better in all aspects of life. They have more confidence, their well-being is better, and it ends up affecting, you know, all aspects of the society, from social, cultural, economic, and all those sorts of things. So while it's a soft thing, it's also a tangible thing that we believe has lots of impacts on us. So yeah, we spend a lot of time thinking about that. Another thing that we try and do is, and again, this is a well, I don't know if it's specific to design, but I guess I'm coming at this idea through my industry that I'm in, is we need to sort of diversify our language in design. In the past, cultural design and within graphic design and visual communication has been very narrow. People have gone to all sorts of sort of well-trodden tropes, using kōwhaiwhai and using simple weaving patterns and stuff like that, and that's all good. But you know, we know our culture's got a lot more to offer than that. It's a lot richer. You know, we're every day we're learning about more of our stories and unearthing them in our whakapapa and other atua and all sorts of things, you know. And so we kind of want to be using design to not necessarily perpetuate sort of unwanted stereotypes, but how can we continue to surface new stuff through design? And when we do that, you know, we're hopefully creating a little bit more of a wellspring for others to be able to bounce off. It's not really about having sort of one design language as a culture or as a country. It's about a really diverse range of people exploring it in their own way in relationship to them and their localities. And so that's another thing that we think about quite a bit. And then I guess I called this talk Woven Universe because, well, really I had to come up with a name really quick. And it's a phrase that keeps coming back to me quite often in the work that we do. And I think it was Matua Bernard Makuare who put us onto a book of one of his tupuna Māori Marsden, and the book's called Woven Universe. And yeah, as a phrase and some of the ideas within the book just keep popping up in the mahi that we do as a bit of a framework. And, you know, it's really about whakapapa and the interconnectedness between all things. But yes, I'm going to talk a little bit about this sort of collective existence within our work, because we're often pulling on mātauranga Māori, and a lot of the time that comes from the other people that we're working with, whether it's Māori historians or other knowledge holders in that space, as well as just the wider society that we're a part of. And so our work never really exists on its own. It's informed constantly by all these other energies and all these other things that we pick up and hear. And again, those are those whakapapa connections that we try and stay conscious of, I guess, acknowledging, especially in a world that's, you know, pretty, what's the word? It's a pretty individual, it can be a pretty individualistic world out there. But really, if we have a collective existence, you know, we can acknowledge each other's differences, we can be proud of our own differences, but then we can work together as well to collectively achieve things. Instead of just having wars all the time. But I mean, war's a pretty human thing to do as well. But anyways, so, you know, these ideas within Māori whakapapa, they're also really, they have a lot of crossovers with creativity in general. You know, and Charles Eames said this: eventually everything connects, people, ideas, objects. The quality of the connections is the key to quality per se. And so lots of these things are very similar to how we think about whakapapa and threads of knowledge and threads of connections to each other, and how healthiness and richness and wealth comes from all of those things, those bonds being stronger and all that sort of stuff. We'll finally get into some work. I'll just start talking about some stuff. So this is a mahi we did with Dame Henewehi Mohi, and you know, she's a bit of a legend, and we've learned a lot from her. And a while back, she wanted to bring the haka back to Aotearoa, the world record for the largest haka, bring it back to Aotearoa. France held the record, and underneath all of that was this, I guess, inquiry that she's always been on as a Māori, which is to unite people through singing and dance and performing arts. And so, you know, that's what she believes in, and that's where events like this come from. And so when we're working on things like this, we get to spend time with her, we get to hear her opinions on things, and we get to think about how we can help sort of bring those visuals to life. In this situation, she was talking to us quite a bit about, you know, just the state of division in Aotearoa, as well as some of the misconceptions around haka being like quite a staunch war dance, and that being sort of the end of the story. And, you know, from a lot of her, she lives quite close to, in the Hawke's Bay, to Tā Timoti Karetu, and so they talk a lot about all sorts of things, and one of the things they spent a lot of time talking about was the breadth of haka, and how haka has sort of been, I guess unintentionally or maybe intentionally, pigeonholed as a kind of war dance, when really the original essence of haka is that it's a dance about the celebration of life. So there were all sorts of different haka. There were all these diverse types of haka for different purposes and things like that. And so we were coming into it, learning this, or hearing this from Fire, and thinking about what we might be able to do and for us it's about not perpetuating stuff that we don't want to perpetuate. And we see a lot of black and white haka stuff and that staunchness, and so we were coming at it with a bit more of a celebratory, inclusive attitude. And then the whakapapa of haka itself is with Tāne Rore, who is some say is the personification of haka in the atmospheric heat shimmer that we see on heat and coming off the land in summer. And so some of those origins were sort of feeding into what we were thinking about in terms of creating this shimmer and this vibrancy within the word haka, and trying to get a little bit closer to some of the origins of the stories of haka, instead of falling for stauncher traits or other things that already exist. But what else can we sort of unearth and bring to life? So we do all sorts of stuff. I'm going to go quite quick actually, because I've got quite a few things in here. Very colourful, pretty modern to some extent, and the field that we're in is a little bit different to architecture, but it's very ideas and storytelling based, and so it's identities and brands, and then they kind of travel out into the world and end up on t-shirts and all sorts of books and all sorts of sort of things really. And we got the haka back to Aotearoa and brought all sorts of people together. And so I guess some of my lessons from this is I was really blown away by the range of people who paid and showed up to do the haka, and there were resources for those who might not know the haka to learn the actions, because in order to get the record you've got to get quite a lot of the actions. It has to be something like 90 or 85% of the actions need to be correctly done and all that sort of stuff. And the effort that people went to, and then the sort of joy of coming together as a people and then performing it with a cause and all of those sorts of things. It was magical to see, and I think Dame or Whaia Henui Mohi is an example of so many, and there's heaps of you guys here in the crowd who have really strong beliefs on how we can use creativity and our own fields to bring us together as a nation. This is the Matariki public holiday logo and identity that we worked on with lots of people, including Rangi Mātāmua, who was heading the whole kaupapa. And I guess for us, some of these kaupapa are just quite huge, and we learn a lot in these processes. And for us, the time that we got to spend with Rangi was incredibly sort of loaded with knowledge, and there was all sorts of things that came out of that for us in terms of this kaupapa. But really, at its heart, one of the things that I really noticed in Rangi right from the start, as a Māori who carries quite a lot of knowledge, and as somebody who spends a lot of time sharing that knowledge, is just his generosity. He really lived by the sentiment, kāre he oranga i te mātou ranga ki te kore te mātou ranga e horahia, which is that we have to, knowledge doesn't have any life unless it's shared with people. I've never met anyone more generous than him, considering the knowledge that he has come from Whānau books on Matariki and the stars, so stuff that's very close to him. But he shares it with everyone, regardless of who they are, and that's his belief, is that we have to share it in order for the culture to be able to continue to live and continue to exist and to progress, and to not be a static thing, but to be something that can keep evolving as with the relevance of the world. And do you guys want to know about the design at all? Yeah. Well, it's I guess we had lots of wānanga, and it was our process is very wānanga based. So what I mean by that is lots of different skill sets in the room, either on Zoom or in actual meetings, trying to figure out at the start like what we're doing, what might be the right ways to go, what might be the wrong ways to go, and what the potential is within it. And one of the things we talked about right at the start was from an iconography point of view, moving away from, like a 5-sided star or an 8-sided star or a 6-sided star or a 4-sided diamond star, and getting closer to what stars look like from within our culture in Aotearoa. And, we get to we go back to weaving into tukutuku and whatu, and we get the cross weave. And so we go back there, and then we decide that, we're going to push that as being like the star form that we want people to understand within our standpoint here in Aotearoa. Even the Māori phrase, manawa te a matariki. We started off with a bilingual tagline, but over time, we just realised that actually people already know the word matariki, and manawa te is a pretty easy word as well, and so we ended up getting rid of that. And for us now, when I look at the logo, excuse me, when I look at the logo, it's both a representation of the cluster, but also a representation of us as people coming together, our nation in its diversity sort of weaving together. And one of the things, sorry you guys, I'm going to pull out another throat lolly. One of the things that Rangi would be saying to us is the cluster is telling us how to act. So the stars are clustering together, and as a country we need to cluster together like them, so we take our behaviour from the cluster and how the stars orbit each other and things like that. But anyways, it's colourful. We did all sorts of stuff. We linked back to weaving quite a bit. Oh, this animation's going to work. This shows you gives you the names of all the stars, and the order that they're appearing in is in the whakapapa order of them, from oldest to youngest. For me, these sorts of jobs are like, it's pretty straightforward to go to like a tukutuku whatu as a solution for this. But I think because of the nationalness of it, we spent a lot of time talking about how much flair we put into it, and we ended up in this space where we sort of wanted it to be instantly iconic to Aotearoa. We didn't necessarily have to explain anything, and so sometimes, that's the way that we go. The most obvious way to go is the thing that we should do, and the only way we really know if it's correct or not is once you launch it. Time sort of tells whether or not the work is good, whether or not it gets gets used by people. And we've had so many magical moments with Matariki where some of our really top weavers have gotten in touch and wanted the colours, and then wanting to weave. These are kind of weird circular moments where we're pulling from weaving culture and doing what we're doing, and then what we do gets reconstituted back into our culture and these sorts of things. There's some funny things, like you can actually text it to people by like setting it up on little rows and pressing enter and doing another star and things like that. So I think when people play with design, when you're not the designers, but once you put it out into the world, when people play with it, that's a real sign that what you're creating is connecting with people. And then it's ended up in the randomest places, like on these Brisbane Broncos. The Brisbane Broncos have got quite a lot of Māori in their team, and so they're celebrating Matariki over there and wanting the tohu to put onto their league jerseys and stuff like that. So these things are, I guess, as close as you get to having affirmation that you've done something that hopefully connects with people. And we get lots of teachers reaching out to us, and so the tohu for us, I guess, is less of a logo and more of an educational diagram. I guess that's how we think about it. By having that tohu, we have lots of school teachers who email us and show us what they've been doing with their kids, and they're getting into tukutuku, or they're getting into designing their own tukutuku, and the tohu has become a bit of a vehicle, I guess, for people to connect. And I've been in the fish and chip shop and heard, little kids, saying to their parents, "Oh, Mum, do you know what those? Do you know what that yellow one is? Do you know what that is?" And their parents are like not even listening to them. Yeah, no, that's a star. That cross is a star, and the yellow one is the wishing star, Ngāi Te Rangi, and things like that. So, it's cool to see that stuff starting to happen. And
Groups did you consult with them in knowing because Matariki is one thing and there's Pūanga another?
yeah,
How does that all
we right from the start we had like Te Papa, whole bunch of ministries, the government, Rangi in the centre sort of, and then us and others working together. And it was clear that this one was just about getting a public holiday logo, because they came to us quite late and we didn't have much time. But since then, we've had heaps of kōrero with people like Che Wilson, who is from Ngāti Rangi in the Waimarino National Park, Whanganui Awa sort of region. And, he's discussed whether or not we can actually expand this logo and build out the rest of the stars to include Pūanga, Rehua and things like that. So there's been some discussions around that sort of stuff. And I think the strategy from their end was to start with Matariki and then open up the gate for Pūanga and others. And and I was talking to Rangi yesterday actually about Matariki this year, and he's fresh back from Tahiti, who have now got their own Matariki public holiday based on what happened here in Aotearoa, and so he was over there helping them with that. And what's going through his mind at the moment is they weren't mocking Aotearoa, but in Tahiti they were sort of talking about how serious we are here, with all our big kind of serious karakia and all our tapu moments and stuff like that. And he's come back from being over there feeling a little bit like, well, maybe how do we be more fun? How do we yes, we're having these big, chiefly sort of hautapu and stuff like that. But, what about all those other functions of life, like having a big kai together and laughing and dancing and having fun and all of those kind of aspects. And so it's interesting because we always get insights like that, and then we end up feeding that stuff into our work. We're going, maybe we can be more, maybe we do need to be more fun. We've gotten to a point as a culture, and now we move forward even more. Interesting whakaaro there. Should I let you talk about this one, Nigel? So we worked with Nigel and Toi o Tāmaki and the team on the Toi Tū, Toi Ora, contemporary Māori art identity a while back now. And I guess, again, this is what I mean by this woven universe thing. Like when I look at this, all we really did was take the title of the show and turn it into this sort of woven universe. And the words Toi Tū, Toi Ora sort of chant their way, onto posters and onto the book and onto walls and stuff like that. We were talking about these concepts of Māori time and space, which Nigel was reflecting in the show, non-linear ways of thinking about a survey exhibition with artists and things like that. And, we end up creating this kind of woven timescape where we use the Māori title and turn it into a whole Tron matrix kind of thing, I guess. One of my reflections on this is at the time, it felt like we were really, as Māori designers and, doing something of quite significance within Te Ao Māori, we were a little bit nervous because we felt like this didn't really look like what Māori stuff usually should look like. And, you know, we wanted, I mean, it's in my nature to push, and we were going to push. And I think often in those situations for us, it's always conceptually in Te Ao Māori, and then the way that we deliver it, we have a whole spectrum of tools, and we have a whole world of technologies and stuff to pull on these days. And I think if the intention is authentic and the knowledge is there, then usually it's okay. And then I guess we took a lot of inspiration from the artists themselves, because the artists, our Māori artists, are the ones who are at the forefront of pushing the art form forward, and they're very contemporary in their mindsets, and so it felt, you know, in some way fitting for us to have a go ourselves to sort of push forward a bit more. I guess in terms of that collective existence, we were also thinking about some of the Māori architectural concepts of the building itself. Like when we're outside under the canopy, you know, we're in the realm of Tāne, and there's, you know, these trees shooting up and these canopies coming up. And so it's a bit hard to see, but there's the Toi Tū Toiora pattern is a bit more dappled and letting light through, like trees would when we're in that realm. And then when we get inside, the black stuff on the left is on the ground floor, which is the realm of spatially the realm of Papatuanuku. And again, I think this was Matua Bernard Makoare who'd set up a whole bunch of these when he was, you know, worked with the architects on these spatial concepts when he was on the Haerewa advisory group, I think. And so we're trying to acknowledge those things and make sure that in our work, those efforts aren't sort of lost, and we're not, our story is in sync with those bits and pieces. And it was also te kore, so that was where we were in the darkness. It was a bit more cavernous, you know, pretty subtle, but it's what we try and do. And then when you're up on the next floor, you're in Te Ao Marama, so you know, you get into the whites, and the show was doing that too. And then also, yeah, there's sort of glitters and all sorts of things in those letters. But yeah, pretty simple idea that just keeps growing over time. We did some activation things where you could go and then experience the different stages of the Māori creation narrative in a audio form and light form. And we're kind of just geeking out here, like starting to think about putting that pattern into places that are much more interesting with all of the lights and mirrors and things that are happening. So it's good fun. We made some bags recently out of the flag bags, and we got a whole bunch of flags after the exhibition, and they were just, we had them for a while and we wanted to do something with them, because we were thinking about like how does the universe keep living, or what can things transform into over time, and how can they continue to be artifacts beyond their kind of, I guess, life form as flags, and turn into something useful, turn into a new form of beauty and transform. So we did that, which was fun. And so everything in the bags, I think they're fully upcycled from the flags. The only additional material in the bags is just the stitching, but everything else comes from the flag. So, you know, we try and toy with a few spin-offs like that. And then this is another spin-off from Toi Tū Toiora, which is the doco that Chelsea has done. And so when we were doing, you know, the lettering for the doco, instead of doing something like new, we go back to all of the thought that's already in Toi Tū Toiora and what we sort of worked on and been a part of, and how do we again refresh it. And so what we're seeing here is, you know, the elements from these letters, all of these components that are in the original letters, and then we just rebuild it into something new that's, you know, gives it new life, because it is a, you know, it's its own individual, it's its own thing, but it does have a whakapapatua. And so, you know, moving from that into building something new for the doco. And we did, book 2. Books are interesting for us because, you know, when you are a Indigenous culture, you just there's not as many books on Māori artists, and there's not as many books on Māori architects, and the Western canon is really strong, and that history continues to perpetuate itself. But then we're able to design good-looking books, and so part of our practice is feeling, I guess, obligated to make books for our artists and for them to be able to hold their own against the Western canon of books and to be of a high quality, because we believe that our artists are high quality and have so much to offer and so much richness. And books travel. That's the good thing about books. They're a democratic thing. They hold so much knowledge, and then you can basically shoot it out into the world so that everyone can learn. So it's a good resource in that sense, and we've seen it go all sorts of places. There's some, I think this is yours, Nigel, and then I saw this one a while back too with Graham Norton's got a copy of the book. So, the book travels, and you make it look nice and feel nice, and then it ends up in situations like this where somebody who would never interact with Māori art gets a copy as a bit of a taonga for them, and yeah, and then we did this one too for Rewi. I don't really know what to say about the Rewi book other than, I guess, people say it's kind of quite a radical looking book for an architectural tone, but it doesn't really feel that way to me or to us, and we didn't feel like that when we were designing it. We were really just trying to reflect him and listen to all of the material that we got about him. And he used pink highlighters a lot. There was a lot of talk about his sort of highlighter markers with pink, and it just kept coming up for us as a bit of a tohu. And then he did a lot of sketches. He did heaps, and they were beautiful and they were really colourful, and they were quite different to what other architects were doing as well. And so for us, I guess where we ended up at with the book was just us trying to really reflect him and do him justice. And I guess he is a bit of an individual. He's a real individual within the architectural world, and so the book looks like this because of him, really. And yeah, there's things in here, like naive things, like we've had publishers go, is it political that you don't have the editors on the cover of the book? And things like that. And I guess we didn't even really know. We were just like, it'll just look cool like that. That's all it needs to say. It's just his name, it's his hand, it's his universe, it's his world and his imagination. Just put Rewi on it. And I guess we must have, yeah.
That's a really beautiful
The what?
on the outside of that book. Were you had a hand in that as well, in terms of the tactile feeling of the stock and everything?
Yeah, so our goal is to control all of that stuff. Yeah, it's all, I guess the thing with, the thing about books is that we think about them as a form of architecture. They are an object, and then they hold a lot of content inside them, so they're like a vessel in that sense. And, in today's day and age, I think, again, there's almost no books on Māori architects, so we have to, we're trying to make a really special one just to set the scene. So that, again, it's punching at a particular level. But nice cotton fabrics. Again, people we get to work with, and we're lucky to do a lot of artist collaboration. So again, the way that we work, we end up getting to kind of collaborate with all sorts of people. And Marie Sheehan, who's a sound and audio artist, we created this with her for her exhibition, All Tyrone. And again, we were. This is pretty early on, and we were trying to push. I like photography a lot. I've always done photography. I was in the darkroom when I was like 15, mucking around, and it's always, I guess, been a part of my practice. And so I'm always interested in toying with it and creating images. And I think about how it could collide with some of our Māori stories and some of our narratives and qualities within our culture. And so this is this photo, which is like a 25-second light painting exposure with a wahine in the middle throwing these kind of weird LEDs that we kind of just made to create these patterns. was inspired by Hine Raukatauri, who is or some say is the goddess of music or flute music. And so we were thinking about sound. We were thinking about there's some quite incredible sound technology that Maria uses, especially in these audio portraits, and I think it's called binaural, where the sound is really moving around you in a 360. You can have sound that shoots down directly above your head to affect you, or swoops around you. And so all of those things of experiencing the artwork and what she was trying to do, we were playing with that, trying to I guess negotiate it into something for her exhibition. But Raukatauri, the goddess of music or flute music, in the natural environment takes the form of a case moth and its cocoon, and there's stories around and a waiata by Hirini Melbourne around Raukatauri in her cocoon, and she is singing out for her lost lover. And so that's how some of our stories come to life in the natural environment. And then, through some of our Māori crafts, this is the pūtorino is also based on Raukatauri and that case moth shape and those stories. And so, we're kind of, you can probably see, we're just freestyling our own thing with our for our own purpose, but trying to carry those stories through. Some more photo stuff. This is for MB, Ministry of Business, Innovation and is it Enterprise? And this was for a bunch of Māori, Mātauranga Māori science funds that they did a while back, called He Aka Ka Toro. And He Aka Ka Toro, the name for the fund had come from a karakia, Te Timatanga o Te Ao, which sort of chants its way through the creation narrative in the form of, I guess, a plant or a seed from like a taproot, starting as a taproot, making its way into a little sproutling, and then coming above ground, and then branching out and exploring the world and getting stronger and learning more and gaining more as it sort of grows and does its thing. And so He Aka Ka Toro speaks to that. It really, I guess, crassly translates as a vine that's reaching out. So when we were working on this stuff, we were thinking a lot about, how could we tell that, how could we visualize, I guess, innovation? How could we visualize that karakia and that idea of He Aka Ka Toro? And, they're pretty interwoven, all these things. Like when I look at this, I sort of see like it could be like neural links in the brain. There's obvious links back to our Māori crafts and culture, and then the natural world's in there as well, with these sort of branching plants and the way that we've sort of stylized the kōwhaiwhai and things like that. And then we're kind of physically building these, cutting them and then sort of arranging them and turning them into something that has I guess the energy. Like when we're lighting it, we're thinking about the vitality of the sun, sort of lighting up different parts of it, because we can't forget about the sun as an energy source in that sense. And then we're photographing these with some photographers, and it takes quite a few. There's a lot of people. We start with a scribble, and then to get all the way here, there's quite a bit that happens. But yeah, and then so we think. I guess we try and think a little bit unconventionally in terms of what we might need for storytelling for Māori. And we were trying to create something that's sort of really inspiring, but also clearly Māori, so that they would see it and go, oh, what's this about? And then apply for funding for their various kaupapa. And then we did some... the Bo Larson did the sound for that, who was the drummer that you had up before. So yeah, lots of people involved. this is te paupautanga o te rā, so that's the word rā, which is the Māori word for sun, stood upright, and then te paupautanga o te rā talks about noon, when the sun is at its highest point, when it's at its zenith in the sky, and it's at its fullest sort of strength. And this is in, is it Vulcan Lane, that one? Yeah. And this was through heart of the city, and we worked with Angus Muir and a few others on this to bring these kind of moments of joy into some of the sort of shadier, darker spots. And so we were kind of carrying that vitality of the sun and looking at ways that we could deal with pattern language and physical form and things like that. We recently did the brand for Toi Tauranga, which has reopened end of last year. And we worked with Sonia Korohina, who's the director there. And then they had a Māori advisory group called Te Kahu o Hinewa. And this one is, I guess it's quite an architectural approach, this kaupapa, because the land that the gallery is on is called Te Papa. And some of you guys, well, some of the architects might have heard about or seen renders of Te Manawataki o Te Papa, which is a new footprint in the Tauranga CBD there with museum, library, community whare, and all sorts of things happening there. So that's the heartbeat of Te Papa. And so on that same sort of footprint is the gallery, which has been refurbed by, quite dramatically refurbed by Warren and Māni. And they worked with a tauranga moana artist, Maraia Timu, who brought a lot of sort of her earth-based qualities into the building. And so when we were working with one of our bros, Q Bidwa, who was on Te Kahu o Hinewa on the Māori advisory group for the gallery, we were talking, or he was telling us about the specific ground within Te Papa that the gallery is on. Used to be a big garden, a big cultivated garden for iwi, and it was quite large apparently, and was a place that sustained and nourished quite a lot of tauranga moana with its big gardens. And so what we started to talk about was these similarities between, you know, while the gardens aren't there anymore, we've got this pātaka, the storehouse of art now. And so instead of nourishing through kai, we're acknowledging what was there, but then talking about the fact that we're nourishing through art and nourishing the mind now, and dealing with a lot of those similarities between, you know, cultivating the land and art, which is with those to do with those nourishing whakaaro, those nourishing ideas, but then also both, you know, carry a lot of DNA of our culture and processes and IP and the way that we would have grown, and the taonga that we use to till the land and stuff like that. We know all of that sort of interconnectedness between those things. It's funny, some of them work, some of them don't. A little animation about that, about the tohu. I guess we've tried to make that story of the whenua part of the story of the gallery, so that it isn't forgotten. So I think that's why we sort of dig into those layers. But also what we've found is, like, you know, when the cruise ships come in, you know, they love this stuff because they're not getting like an American experience or a European experience. They're getting something that they can't get anywhere else in the world. They pick up a T-shirt and they learn about it and those sorts of things. So yeah, lots of cool little. And then lastly, I just wanted to share a recent kaupapa that we've just finished up on. This is in Nelson. This is like a 22-metre waka backlit waka attached to the ridgepole of the Nelson Airport. And it's created by ngā iwi o te tauihu o te waka a Māui, a collective of 8 iwi who occupy the top of the South Island. And we've been, I guess, working down there with them for maybe 3 years on all sorts of things, including this. And this is a partnership between them and the airport. And, you know, again, there's not much there's not much Māori culture visible down in Nelson, and so there's been really big push down there recently, and lots of great examples up here in Tāmaki and other places around the motu, and so they're on their journey to to make sure that their stories and their people and their culture is seen down there. And so this waka acts like a tomo or a gateway or a threshold. The airport is, I think it's the busiest regional airport in the country because of the able Tasman and lots of tourism. So lots of people come through this gateway into Nelson and then on to the top of the south in all sorts of directions. And so the waka on the left-hand side, that's the car park side, so it's kind of landing down on the car park side, and then on the right-hand side is the runway side, and so everyone has to walk under this. And there's lots of kōrero wrapped up in it. The waka's called Aorere Ararau, and I guess it's that whole able Tasman sort of harbour is called Te Tai o Aorere. And there's three, it talks about the three waka down there, Kurahaupo, Tokomaru and Tainui, and they have a really rich history of migrations, which they call te hekenga, from Kāwhia over to Taranaki, down to Wellies, and then over to settling the top of the South Island. So there's lots of stories wrapped up in that. But, like things like this for me are real solid examples of that collective existence where the airport has paid for this. And it's not cheap to manufacture something like this and engineer it up inside their building. And they have wanted to do this and continue to do things like this alongside iwi. And, there's so many hands involved in creating something like this. It's something that can't really be achieved by one person or one party, but takes quite a lot of people coming to the table to be able to achieve them. Maybe I'll stop there. Yeah, sure.